for joining us, and we hope that you are enjoying today's presentations. Next, we turn our attention to the subject of intelligent transportation systems in a chat moderated by Maria Burns from University of Houston's College of Technology. She is joined by a carefully curated panel of leading experts from DeGuro, VMAR Consulting, and Booz Allen Hamilton. We appreciate them all for being with us today. And with that, let's jump right in.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Port of the Future panel discussion titled Intelligent Transportation Systems. I'm delighted to present a very knowledgeable team of professionals with an impressive contribution into the industry. Our panelists will demonstrate the applications and future trends of ITS. They will examine different benefits as a means of optimizing management performance and costs by improving operational efficiencies. This is a very timely and very interesting panel discussion, and I look forward to welcoming each one of our panelists. Let us start with Mr. Thomas Damsgaard.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this very important discussion and dialogue today. I am working with a company called VMAR. We are a global consultancy company that are providing services within the supply chain. Everything from raising capital for financing of assets-based operations all the way to developing strategies to drive value for the supply chain. So thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you, Thomas, and welcome. Then we have Ms. Lasinia Calway.
Hello, I am with DeGuro, a project freight forwarder, and I have been with them 3 years and counting, gaining international logistics experience from export, import, customs work, a little bit of everything. I have been around the globe to a few countries to gain knowledge on country-specific export and import regulations and such. And I am continuing to learn within the logistics industry, international logistics industry.
Absolutely, you are the future, right? William Ashley is a veteran of the U.S. Army. So, Mr. Ashley.
Thank you, Maria. Navy, actually. Graduated from the University of Houston with a BS SCLT in 2020. Was in the Navy Reserves, worked for Schlumberger and supply chain and maritime disaster response, hurricane relief, port efficiency analysis, but are now currently with Booz Allen Hamilton as a senior consultant in the defense industry. And I'm starting a company focused on urban mobility as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you for serving our great nation. And my name is Maria Burns. I'm a professor and researcher at the University of Houston, College of Technology. We are organizing the Port of the Future event, and I have 20 years of experience in the maritime industry in positions of management, operations, shipbroking, regulatory compliance. I'm an honorary member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I'm really happy about it. And basically, I conduct a lot of research on security, technologies, and many more stuff. All right, let us commence with our questions now. How is the industry coping with the coronavirus disruptions? Lasinia, would you have an answer for this?
I do. Since COVID hit last year in March 2020, there had been many disruptions from equipment imbalance, container rates skyrocketing, laborers being cut out of the pictures at ports, subcontractors increasing their costs, all of these different disruptions. Now, within an international logistics standpoint, what we are doing to rectify this problem are staying on top of rates with different carriers. A lot of space is limited on container vessels and things like that. So we have to stay strict with the container rates based on our contracts that we may have or not. And during this time, we actually became negotiators when it comes to our subcontractors. We like to negotiate a better price since everybody's skyrocketing their prices. And also, we're thinking of different ways to move things, the less costly. So if let's say we have something shipping to Tokyo, how can we get it there for cheaper? If rates or terms are FOB, can it be booked at origin or destination? It might be cheaper to book it in destination and obtain a booking that way. But we have to think outside the box when it comes to COVID in order to adapt during these disruptions.
So this is a great opportunity to reinvent your company and our industry, basically. Thank you, Licinia. Now, I have a question for Mr. Damsgaard. Do you consider the coronavirus situation is promoting or impeding the implementation of intelligent transportation systems?
Great question. Let me just start out with a preamble here, that we are currently in a state of crisis when none of us are able to live our lives the way we really want to. We are struggling to make our own choices. So while we do see a lot of need for change and transformation in the industry, I don't believe that we're in a period of evolution just yet. But this is definitely a time where our businesses within the supply chain, within transportation, maritime, with my expertise, is up for some massive changes and transformations. And new patterns are emerging from this chaos. And the response is in a big way driven by innovations and collaborations, and they're starting to show. So I see the pandemic as happening at a time where businesses have kind of gotten a mandate to make very difficult decisions, which they otherwise probably would not have made, and they wouldn't have had the courage to do. So that is building momentum, and that is including also accelerating the digitalization within the industry, which I'll get into a little bit later. One very positive thing for transportation that has come out of this is actually that supply chains and the importance of transportation sector in this equation has actually gotten significant attention during the pandemic. We have oftentimes been perceived as a necessary evil, sunken cost to projects and so forth, and very much looking at lean operations. Well, the narrative is actually changing, and we are looking a lot more at resilient and responsive value chains today. And in this respect, utilizing data and information to drive more multi-dimensional, value-focused, intelligent transportation decisions. Like Doug was pointing out, price is a very significant part of this industry, but what has come out of the pandemic also is that time is very important as well too, as is responsiveness to increase or decrease in demand, which we'll talk about later. Thank you.
Fantastic points. And one thing I want to mention is that these technologies have been known, have been invented. We've had patents on them for more than 10 years, but this is the time, as you said, excellent point. And one more thing, exactly based on your point, transportation was something that could be defined as the industry where when everything worked perfectly, nobody noticed. And if the slightest flaw would be apparent, then everybody would, really notice only then, right? But now, hey, transportation is the hero of this situation. Good point. And Mr. William Ashley, on the same question about the coronavirus situation.
Right, I tend to agree with Mr. Damsgaard. In my opinion, the coronavirus situation is promoting the implementation of ITS. With more and more companies resorting to remote operations, the more receptive to innovative ideas. For many, the transition to remote work isn't only a temporary solution, they're moving to a permanent remote work, and they're wanting to adapt changes to implement ITS. From the employee point of view, working from home is proven to provide additional time you didn't previously have, where you're learning additional hobbies or you're doing additional work, where you're taking that information and you're implementing the change within your own organizations. And from a civil engineering point of view, just on infrastructure, the reduction in traffic seen during the pandemic has promoted an increase in infrastructure construction projects where ITS can actually be implemented and built into the infrastructure.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, Ms. Lacinia Carway, do you believe the pandemic is promoting or impeding intelligent transportation systems?
Thank you for your question. I definitely believe it is promoting the implementation of ITSs. As Thomas said, it's driving digitalization into a traditional industry such as freight forwarding. There's no more pen and paper. There's EDI and RFID scanners and things like that. Things are becoming more seamless and autonomous through ITSs. Data is being aggregated to the highest meaningful level through ITSs, and this allows for quick decision-making based on predefined indicators that are out there when thinking about shipping things. ITSs are promoting much more transparency between all organizations, and I see it as considerable cost savings given the coronavirus and the implementation of ITSs. Things are working more smoothly at some point.
Great points. Thank you so much. Mr. Damsgaard, in which way do intelligent transportation systems help the industry cope during this challenging era?
So we've already talked a little bit about the level of complexity within transportation, and intelligent transportation is finally starting to be floated, where we are leveraging some of these digital tools to develop better, both qualitative but also quantitative understanding of logistics. We are looking at wider data, and we are taking, the standard understanding of how do you develop intelligence and wisdom, how are you able to reason. So we are going from data, and we're starting to capture this wider data, not just within our industry, but also within our customers and our customers' customers to understand demand drivers. And we're turning this data into a deeper knowledge of the information. So we're going from data to information, and we are then structuring that in true knowledge. And then knowledge becomes the wisdom that we need in order to make more informed decisions regarding the complexity of logistics. And it's informing the design decisions that we need to make, both internally in our own organizations, but also externally in how do we actually design our services, how do we design, the assets that we are going to be utilizing. I touched on it a little bit earlier, shipping and maritime and transportation is very multifaceted. And when that we are trying to achieve with this intelligent transportation platforms, and it's getting the right product in the right quantity, in the right quality, to the right place at the right time, at the right cost, and to the right customers. Most people don't think about that level of complexity when we are talking about transportation. And when we layer in these intelligence and digital platforms, it starts making a lot more sense how we take this multi-dimensional service offering and tie it in together. So that's how I see it.
Great points. William, how do you think the global logistics systems are impacted by ITS?
I think ITS impacts global logistics systems in many ways. Looking at it from a traffic management system run by either a state, a city, or a federal entity, global logistics systems are impacted wherever ITS is implemented because it's rerouting traffic, it's helping to manage the flow and the congestion, and road transportation is better controlled in that way. You're saving time, fuel, money, reducing traffic jams, and again, just with congestion. The same thing applies for ports using ITS to manage throughput. Ships can be offloaded or unloaded more efficiently than ports not utilizing ITS. Also, ports using ITS will be better prepared regarding infrastructure for an increased storm intensity and rising sea levels as a result for global warming. I can also see the railroad industry utilizing ITS better to manage traffic at crossroads to reduce traffic incidents with vehicular transportation. And in the future, ITS will be utilized on a micro scale, improving all modes of transportation efficiency with a focus on reducing environmental impacts, working towards a more sustainable future.
Thank you so much. Now, how about the applications of ITS into your industries? I would like to ask Thomas and Lasinia. Thomas?
Well, one area that has been quite inspirational through this pandemic has been the container industry's impactful smart response to the drop in global demand for freight services. And I think it has been a true show of how an enterprise artificial intelligence transformation actually can work in maritime. We've seen in many other industries out there, travel industries, the finance industry and so forth. But it's encouraging to see how it's finally working within maritime, within shipping. And the container carriers as a whole has kind of taken a page from the military scenario planning playbook, you know, where they're going in and they're creating alternative futures and they get a chance to exercise the organization's response and develop strategies and also technical responses to different scenarios. And one of the things that they have taken from the AI toolbox, the artificial intelligence toolbox, the deep learning toolbox, is a thing called digital twins, where you go in and you build up basic historical data, and historical data will be structural data, so stuff you have within the organization, which is a little bit more rigid, but also going out and utilizing unstructured data and using what they call a native language processing or protocol to go out and start looking at trends on social media, what is being talked about, understanding buying habits of clients and clients, and tying that into, you know, what is the most likely freight demand going to be from that. So the container carriers have developed these digital twins, which is a kind of provides the context in which they operate. And this is the first time it's been done within the container industry. And because of their previous move to start integrating their own freight platforms into their clients' enterprise software platform, they were actually able to gain a lot of real-time or close to near to real-time data on what were their clients faced with, and especially around demand data. And what they were able to do with that and start doing this modeling around it and do this scenario playing within 2 weeks of the pandemic really hitting globally, they were able to go in and start changing their strategy. And we all know now that the strategy for the container carriers was to go in and do blank sailings, reducing the supply of containers, which Dorka has already pointed out, there's really a shortage of equipment here. And because of that, they were not just able to manage through the crisis, they actually been able to increase their freight earning revenue in these bad times as well too. And you've seen in certain areas, trade lanes, freight rates more than double, and in some cases close to triple within just months. And that's a first, because you always have seen the container carriers competing against each other, racing for zero on freight rates. And this time it's going exactly the opposite. And just one last thing I want to point out, you know, in this process here, to McKinsey, they came out with a study last year where they actually believe that machine learning, so this AI technology, can actually reduce supply chain errors by 50% and potentially reduce lost sales by 65% to better understand, you know, demand and supply. And then just one last thing I would say, and this comes off like Maersk, which is still the world's largest container carrier out there, comes off their third quarter report. They are pointing out that agile capacity management and strong focus on customer offerings has helped them drive this increase of 25% in profitability during a downturn in demand. Very, very powerful. And this is where I'm seeing this go. We're going to see a lot more of this.
This is the amazing era we've been looking for decades. We knew all these capabilities were available, but it took a coronavirus to get them to be implemented. Excellent points. And now, Lasinia, would you have any comments on this?
Yes, I just want to share a couple of applications that Duragro uses that help within the ITS and what we're doing as a team for digitalization in ITS. Here's a video.
Excellent.
of Dorgo VisioTrack.
At Doigro, we know that keeping costs and supply chain reliability balanced is a decisive strategic factor in achieving a competitive advantage, which is why we've rolled out an IT system that provides extended advantages and creates value for our clients. Introducing Doigro VisioTrack. It's a customizable web-based track and trace software for easily and successfully handling all milestones across the supply chain. This ranges from requisition to site delivery, both onshore and offshore. Doigro VisioTrack serves as an interactive collaboration platform for all internal and external stakeholders involved in supply chain activities.
To ensure predictive analytics, Doigro VisioTrack works with high-quality data. It displays this data using customizable dashboards to support informed planning and decision-making. Doigro VisioTrack offers real-time visibility of details. This means it is able to increase efficiency, reduce cycle times and inventory levels, as well as mitigate cost exposure within the supply chain.
Visit our website for more information and contact us today to schedule a live real-time demonstration. Doigro VisioTrack, your web-based track and trace software for successful supply chain management.
Thank you. And that is just one of the systems we are currently using. This one was developed following a business need for our oil and gas clients that we wanted to be competitive within their sector. There is also another platform application that we are using that is an ITS, which is called Rig Moves 360. It's not debuted yet, but it will be geared for our clients in the rig market. With all services executed from a single source price, going beyond the transportation of a rig. It'll literally serve as a passport for a rig from a rig cycle from rig down all the way to rig up. It's a great feature. I never knew a rig could have a passport, but this is a feature that will be enabled and intertwined with Doigro VisioTrack. And then we also have a new TMS in the works, Doigro Axis, that will also be intertwined with Doigro VisioTrack. And it'll just give our clients transparency from everywhere. You can do e-bookings through Doigro VisioTrack and Doigro Axis, and it'll be the basis of most of our global logistics. And we're steadily working on it to improve its algorithms and all these different analytics for it to be very intelligent.
That's great. So it appears that your company and many different companies in the industry are really inventing new technologies and new systems based on the existing platforms, which help them differentiate from competition, which is great. Yeah. So I have a question for you. You mentioned supply chain, you mentioned logistics, you mentioned multimodal transportation, you mentioned energy. Do you think that the future of ITS would be for all these systems to talk to each other in the perfect multimodal setting? Or do you think that for now, short term, you mostly see individual segments of the industry kind of, walking on their own?
For now, I see it kind of segregated because the systems work more prominently in the ocean, air, and trucking areas from my standpoint. I don't see it very prominent in the rail industry, but it could pick up as usual. Most of our systems are geared towards the main modes of transport. So I can see rail picking up and inheriting more ITSs, but I just don't see it now from my standpoint.
Right. So again, if the gentleman would like to add to this one, I look forward to that. If you have any question, otherwise I can ask the next question. William, what do you think the applications are of ITS in your industry, which again is unique?
So my industry is the defense industry, and I wanted to thank you for mentioning the connectivity of different areas of transportation, but in the defense industry, it's not necessarily just the transportation, it's how the warfighter is operating, how they're perceiving a battlefield, and how the battlefield is perceived from a strategic point of view. ITS really is going to be necessary in the future to move the industry into algorithmic warfare, which is going to happen in the information era. ITS is going to connect different branches to each other through a single system that'll help strategic planning for overarching views. On a more of a minor scale, there are individual technologies that are improving the automation of warfighting capabilities while decreasing the cognitive functions necessary to operate them. So the warfighter themselves can operate at a higher efficiency while they're being directed at a better level. A specific example of this, I can't give exact details to what our company is working on, but I can give public domain information such as the Army IVAS, the Integrated Visual Augmentation System, which is basically virtual reality goggles that these soldiers can wear to real world events, and they can train with it without getting injured or going into the field. So they're able to do training in person in a lab or a room without going out into an actual situation where they could be injured. So they're increasing safety as well.
Great points. Thank you. Now, Thomas, what do you think, in your opinion, the future trends of intelligent transportation systems are, especially in the maritime industry, where you're a leader, also ports, terminals? What are your perceptions on these?
Well, I've already highlighted the container carriers pivot during the pandemic, and I'm actually seeing a lot of collaboration going on within our space. Some of it is between value chain partners, which is pretty straightforward, but you're actually also seeing a lot of competitors starting to work together on several of these new digital platforms, what we normally coin as co-opetition, and realizing that we have some inherent industry problems and we cannot solve them company by company, but we got to solve it as an industry. Okay. I do see sharing of data as being vital, and it's the further progress in order to optimize. We are seeing more platform integrations. If we look at the technical performance aspect of our industry, you're seeing weather routing companies partnering up with voyage optimization software developers, who again are partnering up with vessel designers, who are partnering up with engine manufacturers, even down to the propellers they're using on the ships. And there is a true vested cross collaboration, providing access to a lot of critical data in order to drive more intelligent and smarter decisions. So that's on the, just one example on the technical performance aspect of our assets. On the operational side, diving deeper and mining a lot more of the operational information, both historical through, for instance, statement of faxes, to look at performance data within the ports, is going to help drive smarter contract terms, but certainly will also enable us to make better commercial decisions, as well as give insight into the different ports' productivity, safety records, and basically they're competitive between them. And then I think that one of the big things these days, the catchphrase is this new sustainable logistics, sustainable shipping, sustainable maritime, that is driven by regulative, drivers from IMO. And here, of course, we are looking at smart ports around the world. I know Rotterdam is working on a project called Port Forward, which is getting more partners, including Port of Houston is in it as well too, where they are looking at how can we work around in-time arrival of the vessels to make sure that they run more optimized with lower emissions. At the same time, also, it will enable ports to run more efficiently. So instead of going out and having to invest heavily in capital campaigns to increase capacity within the ports, these smart port setups will actually have an opportunity to increase capacity without capital investments. So I'm seeing it really going in that direction. And just to kind of round it out, I'm kind of thinking about a saying that George Santayana, which is this Spanish-American philosopher, had, is that intelligence is really quickness in seeing things as they are. And then Einstein said it's actually also the ability to change. So again, we need to be able to see the way things are, and we're using our smart data to do that. And then we got to design our organizations. We got to make sure we have leadership in place that has the courage to make these required changes. Change starts with changing the conversation, and I'm just really excited and happy to be here today to be part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Thomas. We are equally excited. Now, Lasinia, what do you think are the skills that modern professionals require to work with intelligent transportation systems?
The top 3 skills that I think modern day people should have once it comes to ITS is, I think everyone should be or have attention to detail, because there's lots of details within all of these systems. There's algorithms, there's analytics, there's numbers, there's percentages, there's all of this stuff. And that ties into my second skill. You have to be strong numerically and analytically to be able to extract data from these systems, to pinpoint financial decisions and different cost savings that are able to be gained through these systems from my standpoint. And then you also have to be a team player, because all of these systems are collaborative. And one person may be working from Canada, one person may be working from Europe. Y'all have to collaborate and come together to find the most efficient way to get things done. And those are the top 3 skills. But after hearing Thomas, you also have to be informed. Everybody must be informed of all global issues, things about smart ports and things happening all around the world. I think it's good that people know, oh, this is happening in Rotterdam. Oh, this is happening in Tokyo. Just by staying on top of news and things like that is also another skill that people should have. People may not want to look into different news and may just stick to Texas news, but I say you have to open up your thinking cap and think broad and worldly and globally when it comes to all of these things, because we have to come together as a team in the end to adapt to these different challenges, storms, and unprecedented times.
These are excellent points. And gentlemen, I will have to bring you into this discussion if you don't mind. We also have plenty of time for this. But based on Lasinia's points, first of all, think global, act local, and vice versa. This is one of the norms of the new era. Then we have to, as you mentioned, everything now is driven by intelligent systems, which means that the human factor has to adapt to the faster paces. I was just doing my little math there, thinking that a bullet train from, let's say, the southern part of Texas all the way up to Dallas would take half an hour. Something that would take multiple hours years back, now it's just going to take half an hour. So this is actually changing the way that individuals have to work. Now we don't have these big gaps to kind of think and contemplate over networks and all logistics. Now we need to strategize, on the dot, because time is compressed. So this is another important point that humans have to be acclimated to. Another thing, not only it's about multimodal transportation, but we have to consider multidisciplinary. So in the good old days, people just had their little box that they just had to be, okay, I'm into mathematics, I'm into maritime operations, one little segment. Now you just have to be a jack of all trades, because the situation is kind of pulling you to be able to respond and work in very complex networks. So do you have any comments or thoughts on this one?
I'll say something. I think what you're referring to is more like an agile approach and just, T skills. How you have to have a general understanding of everything that's going on, as well as in-depth information. And staying abreast with what's going on, and not just locally, but globally, is key to today's supply chain.
I would like to take a stab at it also, Maria. Again, you're touching on some very, very important points. We need to make decisions faster. There's no doubt about it. There has been this notion historically that we are going through cycles, market cycles. That does not exist anymore. Today, it's microbursts of opportunity, and you need to have the organization designed in order to capture, both read it when it's coming, and this is about understanding the data and the context in which you operate, and looking a lot further down in your value chain where you're adding value. But it's also about having organizations that are willing to change, built to change, and that see status quo as a concern, and actually are more concerned if things don't change than if they change. Another aspect I'll add to it also is that complexity. Complexity is slow, complexity is expensive. So being able to simplify is actually becoming a competitive differentiator. And I can give you one example within our industry where we look at tariffs, for instance, whether it's freight tariffs or it's tariffs from some of our vendors like tugboat companies and so forth. They have so many different line items and they think that they come up with the sharpest price because they have these line items, not understanding the cost that it costs through the entire value chain to process, capture, record, and process by numerous parties these very complex tariffs. Again, one thing that if you can simplify that, you'll be able to take inherent cost out of the system, making yourself more competitive. Another thing is we are very fixed in our thinking of how we do traditional business, brick and mortar, for instance. We need to have our physical offices. Brilliant thing that have gotten shattered during the pandemic where we're all working from home, right? Organizations are realizing that they have to trust their employees to get the job done, and they are getting it done, and they're getting it done more efficiently, financially stronger. We are seeing record earnings coming out of third quarter and coming out of fourth quarter for 2020. And that's through a pandemic. And there's actually an expectation that this is going to continue to grow because organizations are running a lot more lean today on the back office operation. That also means that since they are running lighter and more agile, they're actually able to pivot a lot faster, a lot more nimble. And there's a saying, be agile or die. And I really think this is a time that has proven that there are companies out there that have used this pandemic to surge ahead, having the right people on board that see this as opportunity. And then they're the ones that are really struggling because they have not had the right leadership in place to capture this. So, these are some of my thoughts around where we are today. We need to look a lot at leadership because we can have these conversations, but if we are not going back and putting them into action and making sure that the team understands it and they work on it and they buy into it, we're not going to be able to move our industry ahead, which it needs to. Somebody else will move it for us. Somebody else will move our cheese. So again, coming back to leadership, I think it's very, very important that there is a renewed focus on creative leadership and also cascaded leadership into the organizations today, probably more than ever before.
Amazing points, great points. I was thinking about ITS, all of these benefits, but for every single benefit that you mentioned, there is another side of the coin. Maybe the human factor has to adapt to become this change that we want to see in the industry. So I'm thinking we can improve accident rates. We can optimize safety, security, which is a big deal. We can optimize energy efficiency, also environmental integrity, so many different benefits. But again, the only given is that the human factor will have to catch up with these fast-paced notions. I was thinking of another component, speaking of reduced accident rates because of smart systems. Let us put our regulatory framework cap and think about insurance companies and abiding by the regulations, what do you think is going to happen? That there could be some transition stage to rethink how insurance companies are going to consider a future accident, because in the past or until recently, human factor was a big deal in most accidents, in many accidents. Now we're going to think, is it the operator of a specific device? Is it the entity that maintains the device? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the operator? Is it the entity that leases the device? So everything is now, we have to rethink of all this. Any thoughts on this particular component?
Well, I can add something to that because I've had conversations around some of these topics, and I've been on panels before on it as well too. And there is the whole ledger economy, the blockchain initiatives that are in the market today. It has the potential to, when you talk about claims handling, insurance companies, also down to payment with banks and so forth, there is actually a possibility and opportunity within the whole ledger economy to get rid of that whole aspect of claims handling, because you will be able to start track and trace all the way back through the life cycle of a product or even a service. I know, having conversations with some of my very good friends within the legal profession that are they're living off claims handling, they're seeing a potential of them losing their livelihood coming out of this year, because you will be able to, through ledger economy, going back, or blockchain, going back through the different steps and see where things actually went wrong, or you will be able to stop them, and you will be able to renegotiate, damages to cargo and stuff throughout the whole supply chain process. So,
what an interesting.
So this is looking a little bit ahead, and it's visionary, but again, we are seeing how things have escalated within the last year, the digital transformation, and it is moving now, and I think you're starting to see the pivot point, and we're starting to drive this flywheel now. I would say, and I touched on it a little bit earlier on the technical aspect of where things are going and the collaboration that is going on, we can look to other industries for inspiration as well too. And one industry we can look at is the airline or the travel industry. If you look at the asset side of things, how we manage and how do we reduce damages, how do we reduce downtime and so forth, they're using a lot of sensor technologies, like an airplane engine. They have about 500 sensors on an airplane engine. So they're able to start doing preventive or predictive maintenance of these to reduce downtime on them. And I'm sure they're doing the same thing within the military, and starting to use sensor technology and starting to deep dive and using, pools and historical data in order to map out when you need to go in and be preventive about things. It's going to come a long way. It's kind of ironic to see this year that the container industry, as much as it has surged ahead, there's almost not a week that passes by where we're not seeing 100 or 200 containers being dumped overboard. And I think there's some really low-hanging fruit there to go in and start using the intelligence and the data analytics that they have done on driving freight rates up and reducing the supply of containers, use the same methodology and figuring out why do they keep dumping containers overboard.
Excellent points. Thank you. Another component now, I'm just reading between the lines from what each one of you has mentioned. Some of you mentioned it's all about investing in state-of-the-art technologies. Some others mentioned, your companies are innovating from within. So where do you see the future? Who are going to be the future leaders? Because until now, of course, it was companies that could also make, one component was the human factor, one component was high tech, and then the implementation would be, and the culture of the company. Where do you see the culture of the company evolving in the next few years because of all this, revolutionary high tech?
I'll answer that really quickly. I see it as being whoever is able to discover new functionalities based on machine learning, specific algorithms, and things that tie into AI, because AI will be forever evolving. It's how things will begin to operate. We're still waiting on cars to drive themselves, trucks to drive themselves. So whoever can get an advantage on that aspect of things and get ahead with thinking of better ways to do things within the ITS, I think they'll be ahead of the game from others behind.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll add on to what Senia said. To go with, just getting the more efficient machine learning, more efficient and artificial intelligence, it's really going into the neural networking and making sure that all of the systems in ITS are working together as one. Mm-hmm. And whoever is applying the Internet of Things in the best applied manner and actually improving a process while taking safety into consideration is going to be the most successful, in my opinion.
And I believe that the company or the organization that obsesses about their clients and their clients' needs will be the ones that are successful. I see the digitalization and the tools that are being developed all the way down to the autonomous transportation systems. I see that as an enabler. I don't see it as being the key. It is not always what we do, it's oftentimes how we do it, and that's about obsessing about customer needs and understanding what these needs are.
Great points. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, is there any last comment that each one of you has? What would you like our audience to take away after this exciting discussion?
I say keep driving digitalization within your organization. It'll take you a long ways and put you ahead of the game.
Excellent. Thank you.
Engage in industry-wide dialogue, looking at all your value partners, and recognize that only through dialogue and conversation are we able to transform this industry.
With everything being said in this conversation, I would say be innovative, and your approach to how you approach, what you do to address the global supply chain problem, and making sure it's innovative and learning with the curve of ITS.
And I would also like to mention that since this is the era of big data analytics, and we have all these amazing technologies to put these two together, we would have to make the best out of information that is vast, as long as this is useful, this is truthful, this is real-time information. So basically the next stage would be, what can companies do with a mountain of information, all this big data? How can we optimize it even further to build a future that is better for our clients and ourselves?
I'll take a stab at this one, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So it's not as much so how much information you have. We're in a time where there's unlimited amount of information.
Veracity, validity, yeah.
So what's more important about big data analytics is actually finding what the problem is and how you can use this vast amount of information to solve the problem. So if you have everything you're taking from screen scraping the internet, what is actually applicable to transportation? How can it improve?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is, what I mentioned before. Yeah. Excellent points. So unless you have any other comments, we can call this the end of our panel. I'd like to thank our distinguished panelists, our great audience, the College of Technology, University of Houston, each one of our panelists. So thank you, Thomas, William, Lucinia, and I hope you have enjoyed, ladies and gentlemen, our panel discussion and our distinguished speakers. Thank you everyone for your insightful comments, professionalism, and wisdom. I look forward to seeing you in the future in similar events. Thank you.
Well, thank you to our panelists.
Our next session will begin at 4:15, so if you want to take a moment to refresh yourself, maybe take a brisk walk, and join us for an update on the risk management around shipping in the Arctic.